So when we talk about perfect squares, it's important to think about the perfect square shapes that they form, the number of squares inside those shapes. So when we talk about our first perfect square, we have a 1 square. Our second perfect square is a 2 by 2 or 2 squared, which gives us an area of 4. So 4 is a perfect square number. And then 3 by 3 gives us 9. 4 by 4 gives us 16. 5 by 5 is 25. 6 by 6 is 36. 7 by 7 is 49. 8 by 8 is 64 squares. 9 by 9 is 81 squares. 10 by 10 is 100 squares. Okay, we can keep going on. 11 by 11. So if I go 11 by 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, 6, 9, 11. So 11 is out here. Okay, so 11 by 11 square is going to give us 121 squares. And if we count them, there's 121 of these squares inside that perfect square. So again, when we think of square numbers, I want you to think of square shapes. And when we talk about squares and square roots are just opposites of each other. So 1 squared equals 1, an area of 1. So length of 1 squared gives us 1 square area. If we take the square root of 1 square area, we get a side length of 1. Okay, side length of 2 squared equals an area of 4. The square root of the area of 4 gives us 2. These are what we call inverses of each other, or opposites. Okay, so when we talk about squaring something, we're squaring the side length. Okay, so these represent side lengths. Okay, the answer to square, so once we square a side length, we end up with area. So these represent areas. Okay, the reverse is true here. When we square root something, we're square rooting area. So we're starting with area, square rooting, we end up with side length. So these are areas. Okay, the answer to the square root must be a side length. And it's important to be able to put this into a diagram as well, be able to put the different parts and be able to recognize the different parts in the expression. Okay, the expression here, and they also be able to put it into a diagram. So this is really important too. I'm just going to highlight this because this is really important model to make sure you understand. Okay, when we square and square root things, we're talking about a square. When we square something, we're taking the length, the edge, we square it, so x is our edge. The answer to that is area, the number of squares. And the opposite is true. When we square root something, that x in here is going to be the area. The output is going to give us an edge length.